So,
Okay.
First of all, big congratulations on your new CD, which is called Phoenix. So, could you please tell a little bit what was the idea behind this release and how did you work on this CD?
I've been thinking about this release for a very long time, for years actually. That's when I heard the first time about the poet Forough Farrokhzad. She's an Iranian poet writer. She was born in 1934. And she is the most famous female poet writer from Iranian, Persian, modern poetry. Mm-hmm. And when I started to read her poetry, I knew right away that I have to, at one point or the other in my life, dedicate a CD and work to her and learn her poetry, learn about her life and what she did. And she's pretty fascinating. So I'm happy that finally I got the chance to dedicate this CD, Phoenix, for her.
Great. It's very unusual, at least for European public, I think, because you sing in Persian. But to you personally, does singing in Persian differ from singing in English or German? And if yes, then in what kind of way?
Well, every language differs from each other. When you sing in English, in German, in Persian, in Korean, and Japanese, any language that you choose has a totally different quality of sound. I love all those qualities, actually, and I love to sing in all those different languages. For this group, that Cyminology, that's the name of my quartet that I've been working now for 12 years, we chose the Iranian language, also because my family is from Iran, and I've been raised bilingual, and also because we all love that the poetry from that country, it has a rich poetry, and we all love that. And so it was actually a group decision to say, let's stick to that sound, let's try to develop that and see what kind of melodies do appear when I use this language particularly. And also for the group, since none of them understand the language, for them it's just sound. And they have started to think about how can I change the sound of my instrument to make it fit to that beautiful language. And I think that's one part of how we are working and what happens when you suddenly go into a new world of new sounds, and we found that in the language.
Okay, so you already partly, answered my next question that I was supposed to ask you about. Persian language, Iranian language is very different from, European languages, especially maybe here in Nordic countries, it sounds quite exotic.
Yes.
Do you think that people can still relate to the music if it's sung in such an exotic language?
I would say that you can say that for every music. I mean, Beethoven didn't use a lot of words. Well, for some pieces he didn't use words. And some people love his music and they cry, although they're not from Germany, and some people don't understand what he did, and it didn't touch them. So I think that's the same for our music, and using the Persian language. We had a concert in the Middle East, and it was in Beirut, and the people didn't understand any Farsi, but there were women crying in my concert. Also in Korea I had a concert, and the women started to cry, and I didn't at first I thought, oh wow, why is she crying? She didn't understand what I was singing about. But the music speaks itself, and that's something very important for me, that the music is rich, so that hopefully a lot of people can be touched by that music.
Yeah, I agree. And your music is special. It's really very emotional, very personal. It has this kind of personal touch. But how do you, in your group, in your band Cyminology, how do you describe your own genre?
Yeah, that's something that we have been discussing for a long time, and we don't really have an answer to it. The easiest answer is to say that's Cyminology, that's our music. But of course, I've been influenced from a lot of different music styles. I've studied 4 years of classical music. I just loved being in the orchestra. I loved those sounds. And I was studying with classical drums. I had very different instruments that I've been working on for hours to make the most beautiful sound out of that instrument. And that's what I love about classical music. Their aim and their focus on how does the most beautiful sound of my instrument come. And then after 4 years, I started falling in love with jazz music, and I just loved the freedom that the jazz musicians had, that they just could create in the moment all their emotions, and especially also in a group setting. Like, it's possible to play with 5 or 6 people at the same time, and you've never met before, but you agree on 1 or 2 tunes, and then you just play them, and you improvise, and you get to know each other with music. That was for me so fascinating that I said, okay, I just have to have that in my music, or I just have to do that. And then suddenly I realized how beautiful the Iranian language is, and how much emotions come up in myself when I sing in that language. And so I said, well, I can't just go for one of those. So I have to have the classical music, also the composing part. I think I compose most of the music, and I have the feeling that the classical music or my classical studies influenced me very much. And then the freedom of the jazz music that I need and that I love, and also the sound of the Iranian culture. I think all of those, so it's kind of, you can say it has classical music in there, it has jazz music, it has, let's call it world music, and from each world there's something in there, and that's because that's who I am, that's how I lived, and for me it's very natural to have that in there.
Yes, yeah, I see what you mean. And again, you already mentioned this, that different music schools, let's say, so influenced on your artistic development, and also your cultural background also influenced. So, and I guess because you have in your band people coming from different cultures, so it's a nice mixture altogether, I must say. So, but
yeah, thank you.
In this present day, world where we all see the process and consequences of globalization, do you think that this kind of globalization, I don't know, dialogue, or is it dialogue between cultures, or is it cultures blending with each other? To me, I sometimes think that on one hand it's beneficial, of course, but on the other hand it might be harmful, because some cultures really start losing their particular, features. How do you see this process as a musician, as an artist?
Yes, globalization can always be negative and it can always be positive. As an artist, I always want to focus on the positive things. And I just love the possibility of having access to so many things. I mean, especially for me, as let's say my blood is 100% Iranian, so I can call myself also Iranian, who has been born and raised in Germany. It's for me very sad that I have not so much access to the country Iran. I'm not allowed to move into that country anymore, or let's say if I move there, I will have a lot of difficulties because of what I do. And so that makes me really sad, and I really have a big desire of being there and connecting with the people and learning and digging more into that culture. But on the other side, I'm very fortunate that globalization makes it possible that I can access from Berlin the rich culture. I can meet people here. Berlin is a great city to meet people from all over the world. And I can also access a lot of music and what's happening because of globalization. So for me, that's something precious, and I try to make good use of that. And I think we have still, I hope that'll stay that way, we still have enough of people who stick to the tradition, who love the tradition, and who try to keep the tradition alive. This is not my job, but I'm happy to meet those people and learn from them again.
Yes, and one of your projects, which is called Divan of the Continents, I think is one of this kind of project that helps to promote different world music. Could you please tell a little bit more about this project for those who has no idea what it is about, and also what are you doing with this project right now?
I started this project 3 years ago. And my dream was to create a music that is not only influenced by myself and by my ideas, but also by the ideas of the musicians who come from those different corners of the music. So I invited classical trained musicians from the Berlin Philharmonics. I invited people who are very famous in the Berlin jazz scene, jazz musicians, and I invited people who really live in the world, let's call it world music scene, who know how to play their instruments from other countries in a really great and professional way. And so I tried to bring all those people together, and I wanted them to meet each other and to learn from each other, to be influenced from each other. We try to improvise, all of us. We all read music that has been written and composed, and we try to find the music in between improvisation and composition. So this is a process that we're still in, and it's very fascinating for everybody. I'm very lucky that I found the right musicians that are open enough and also curious enough to go with me on that way. And that's pretty much the main idea of that. Seeing what happens if everybody is in that music and gives a part of himself into that music, but at the same time is willing to change everything that he has been coming from and done so far, so that something new is allowed to happen. And the musicians experience that actually and give me the feedback and say, wow, I've never experienced that before. Although they have done so many different things and great things, but still this is something new for them. And for me, that's a very fascinating journey that I'm allowed to be involved in that, and I'm allowed to give that a shape. But at the same time, I want to be wise and lay back and say, okay, what's happening if I don't control too much? Like, I don't want to be really in control. I want to just, I don't know how to say that. I want to help creating the field so that something new can grow.
You mentioned that musicians are very open-minded. The ones and also curious about learning something different from what they've been doing previously. So do you think that those are the key drives why that keeps this project alive, and this is how synergy is born and how it's maintained?
Yes, definitely. Yes, I need those musicians, and I'm very happy that I find them here in Berlin very easily. I mean, it's a search. It has been a long search, and I'm still searching for two important key musicians in that group that come from the Oriental music and who are flexible. That's pretty difficult to find for me right now. But that's it. I need the musicians who are great in what they do and still have the curiosity to want something new, because you have a lot of musicians who are not interested to do something new. They just love what they do, and they do it in a great way, and they don't need to be curious, or they don't want to. That's their own decision. So I needed that, those people who actually want to be involved, who want to make a change, and who want to be courageous enough to try out something and jump into the cold water, especially when you're a star. I think it's difficult to find star musicians who want to do that after finding something that they've been doing and that they love. So I'm just very lucky person that I found 16 musicians who are like that. And I think the voice thing is also something. The singers, we are 3 singers right now in that project. I have a singer. She has been raised in Tel Aviv. She lives in Berlin, and she sings Hebrew. She's a soprano, so she's a classical trained musician. I have another singer who's Lebanese, who's living in Germany, and he's from the jazz world and is a great singer. And I myself, I'm allowed to sing with them. So it's kind of interesting. We all learn from each other. We have to know how does the other person function and how can I melt into this whole new sound, because since we have many languages, and we have also the different languages from those instruments. Now suddenly there's a Chinese sheng, and a Iranian tumbak, and somebody like an oboe from the Berlin Philharmonics, and they create a new sound that hasn't been created so many times before, because it's also different languages meeting each other. And for me, that's very fascinating. I hope that we keep on searching for a new orchestral sound, and maybe we find that.
I'm sure you will. Of course. So you've tried your hand at many different things, and you're a singer, you compose, you conduct. So what do all those activities, let's say, mean to you, and what do you enjoy most?
Well, I love all of them. I'm very happy and grateful that I'm allowed to do all of them. And, the standard answer for me is, if you have 3 children, which ones do you love most? You love all of them. and you want to spend time with all of them. So I love singing, I love composing, I love conducting, and I'm most happy when I'm allowed to do all of those things. Sometimes I need the possibility to focus on just one of those, and with Divan on the continents, that's a very big, I don't know the English word right now for that. That's a big challenge for me. Because I'm doing all three of those things. I'm singing, I'm composing, and I'm conducting, and I'm organizing. I'm trying to keep this whole thing alive and moving and growing. So this is a big challenge for me, and sometimes I get really tired and I think, wow, I need more energy. But then when I'm with the musicians together, the musicians give a lot of energy back to me. So that gives me the will to keep on moving and to say, okay, it's worth to invest more energy and to see where this whole thing can go. So I'm happy when I can do all three of those things, but I'm happy when I don't have to do them at the same time.
Okay, great. And my last question would be, I don't know if it's too broad. What do you see as a future of music? But if it's too broad, maybe you can just share your future plans and maybe your ultimate goal as an artist. Or how do you see the development of music? I mean, this multicultural approach, is it sustainable or not? So what do you think? Or you can just share your own, goals for the future.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, that's fascinating to watch and observe how people start doing what I'm doing, like putting or let's say they look in their own life story, where they're coming from, where they are, maybe where they want to go to. They meet different people, and then new things happen, and things are melting together. I think that's very fascinating to watch, that all the different music genres, they're coming together, and suddenly something happens that you have to find a new name for that, because it hasn't happened so many times in this form. And I think that's one of my dreams, that we start to develop a new music. People need to be able to put music into special, let's say, corners. I don't know the English word, Schubladen. They like it. You open a box and then you can put it in there. Let's call it classical music. And when somebody comes and he has the roots from the classical music and does something new suddenly, it's difficult for those people. And I find that a lot of people say, well, it's difficult. Where shall I put you? Like, I'm not in charge. Go to the jazz department or go to the world music department. So one person is sending me to another department because they feel they're not in charge with what I'm doing. And that's one of my dreams, that everybody feels in charge, and that they don't say, well, I don't listen to that music because it's labeled jazz or it's labeled classical. Let's just listen to music and see what happens, because maybe I'm touched with something that I wouldn't listen because it has a label that I'm not used to listen to. So I hope that maybe this can be the future of music, that we stop labeling things, that we just start experiencing and going and digging and searching and being open to visit different concerts. I think, again, I have to go to Berlin. I'm sorry that this is great about Berlin, and I want to do that. I do that, actually, and I hope I'll keep on doing this until I die. To go into the Berlin Philharmonics, to go to the jazz club, and go to places that I haven't been before. That's something that I would like to see happen always. People doing something that they haven't done before and challenging themselves to do that. That's what I want to do with myself.